Mastodon fans, and welcome to this week's episode of Feature Friday, presented by Fort Financial. I'm Aaron Johnson, Assistant Director of Media Services, and this week we've got a special edition of the show. I'm bringing in Maria Marchesano, our new women's basketball head coach. Hi, Coach. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for having me today.
Let's start by giving the fans a quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, sure. So obviously born and raised in Fort Wayne, very pumped to be back in town. My coaching career was a little bit different. I actually started at a local small college, Manchester College, not at the time Manchester College, now Manchester University. Spent a couple years as assistant basketball, assistant softball. From there, made a jump to the Division II University Urbana in Ohio, which was mid-season, really crazy situation. Spent about a year and a half there. From there, went up to Walsh University, very cool, small Division II college in North Canton, Ohio. Was there for 3 years, and then I made the jump to Division I. Spent 1 year at IUPUI, and then out to Mount St. Mary's, where I just completed my 4th year. And very excited to be back in the Midwest, and especially excited to be home.
So you mentioned you're a Fort Wayne native. What was your playing experience like in the Summit City back in high school?
Yeah, I mean, basketball is so big here. I think that's one thing, I've coached outside of the state for most of these last 10 to 15 years, and I've always been biased to Indiana basketball, especially high school basketball. We have so much talent. There's so many rivalries. There's always big crowds, especially when it's a big game. I miss that atmosphere, and I'm really excited to be back and after the pandemic, of course, see some nice crowds at high school games.
So what made you decide to return to your home city and coach at Purdue Fort Wayne?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. I had a couple of different opportunities over the last couple of years, and I was just looking for the right fit, and location was a big part of it. I wanted to be back in the Midwest. Being back in Fort Wayne wasn't specifically the goal, but obviously being home is really special. And I wanted to be at a place where I felt like I could succeed. And I think in the Horizon League, with the infrastructure, administration, resources, and just the support system that we have here at Purdue Fort Wayne, I think it's set up for success, and I'm really excited about the future.
Now let's take a step back and discuss what brought you here. So let's start with your playing career at Butler, where you were one of the best three-point shooters in program history. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. So my recruitment was a little bit different. I had originally kind of verbally committed to Michigan State, and then that coach retires. The new coach comes in, brings in her own recruits. And so I'm headed into my senior year, and now I have to find a new home. And I ended up at Butler, and it was just a really perfect fit for me. It was a high academic school, a basketball community. I loved my time there. I actually only played 3 years because my sophomore year I redshirted from a broken foot. And I say that because my teammates often joke that, I could have finished first in three-point shooting at the time, but I ended up finished second, and I only played 3 years, but I'm sure those records have been crushed by now. But very, very cool experience down there. Butler's a good place. And again, it's in the state of Indiana, and basketball is king here.
So once you graduated from Butler, you played some pro ball, if I'm not mistaken. What was your experience like?
Yeah, so right after Butler, I actually took a job. I thought, I was kind of burnt out from playing sports and training and had some injuries. And I took a job back in Ossian, Indiana, actually. And only about a year into that job, one of the teams that had tried to get me to come overseas to play when I was still in college reached out to me and said, "Are you still interested?" And it's kind of a crazy story because I also played softball over there as well. But I loved my experience in Italy. I played for 3 different organizations, basketball, and I played for 2 different organizations, softball. But from the basketball standpoint specifically, I mean, we had fans at our practices every day. They treated us like gods, like we were NBA players. It was so cool. Very, very cool experience. Obviously some crazy stories in there too. There was a lot of shadiness with the organizations. I remember one day my coach went on strike because he hadn't been paid, and the same thing would happen with players. But something, experiences I wouldn't trade for the world. I had so much fun, living in Italy, getting to experience that and, play professionally. And I think it also, helped me want to be a coach too. I saw some different styles over there because growing up, I really didn't want to be a coach. And I was forced to coach some of those younger teams in the organizations over there since I could speak both languages. And I started to like it then. And then when I got my start at Manchester, that's when I really fell in love with it.
And so you mentioned once your playing career was done, you came back to Indiana, got your first coaching job at Manchester College at the time, now University in North Manchester. How did that opportunity arise?
Well, I was actually still overseas, and I was looking for jobs back at home to kind of just fill the time between coming back for one more year overseas. And I first found the Manchester assistant softball position open, and I reached out. And when I got there, I found out they had an assistant basketball position open as well. Now, as a small Division III college, I helped out with those two programs. I had so many other responsibilities. That's how it works at those schools. But I had so much fun, and I learned a lot. I fell in love with just being on a college campus, the atmosphere. I fell in love with, the satisfaction of seeing those girls develop. And I realized there was so much more to coaching other than X's and O's. And that's when I realized this is really what I wanted to do.
And I'm very curious about the circumstances that allowed you to make the jump to a head coaching position midway through a season. What was your move to Urbana like?
So the Urbana coach was fired mid-season from some sort of a scandal. I'm not really sure all the details, but they only had a GA. They didn't have any assistant coaches to promote at that time. So they were looking for somebody who might be interested in taking over the program. I was pretty young. I didn't have a lot of experience, but I knew at that point that I did want to be a head coach. And even though I didn't have a ton of coaching experience, I wasn't super young because I had been overseas playing for a couple years. So my college coach reached out to their athletic director and said, I have somebody that I think would be great for you guys. And he said, I'm doing interviews now and I would love to talk to her. And I think I interviewed, went down, met the team, did the whole thing. And then I started like January 1st, right after Christmas. And so they were already, I think, 2-9 at that point, or 2-10, 2-8, something like that. We're having a pretty rough season, and I had so much fun that year. The best advice I got was just teach what you know. Don't try and be crazy. Just keep it simple. Teach what you know, and get them to play really, really hard, and good things will happen. And that's what happened.
So after you finished up at Urbana, you coached at Walsh, another D2 institution. Then you make the transition to Division I when you were named the associate head coach at IUPUI. Mm-hmm. What was that transition like?
Yeah, so I had gotten the critique that the one thing missing from my resume was Division I coaching experience. You played Division I, but you haven't coached Division I. And so I made the tough decision to go from being a head coach to an assistant coach. And Coach Parkinson named me associate head coach, which was awesome. And I was able to learn from him. Every coach that wins and has success wins in a different way. And I was able to see how he does it. And I learned a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball, working for him. And it ended up working out because I right away got a head coaching job at the Division I level the very next year. And I'm very grateful for my time at IUPUI.
And like you mentioned, just a year later, you got your first Division I head coaching job at Mount St. Mary's. You took over a program that was middle of the pack in the Northeast Conference, and then you led them to a conference championship and an NCAA tournament berth this past spring. And you were named NEC Coach of the Year. Tell me about how you were able to have such success there.
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. To have success, you got to have a lot of things go your way. First and foremost, we had a group of kids that bought in right away. They got in the gym. They worked really hard. They bought into what we were trying to do. I had a really intelligent and hardworking staff behind me that was able to get in the gym with the girls and live in there for like 3 straight years. I think that as a staff, we kind of felt like we finished our turnaround last year and then didn't have an opportunity to prove it because the world shut down. We were getting ready to play our semifinal game. So it was really cool to be so let down and then come back 1 year later and be able to seal the deal. And, it's just the support at the Mount, the administration, the staff, the players. It's just so many different factors that went into us getting that program turned around. And, we developed the kids that we had. We had a young group when we took over. There's 6 freshmen and I think 4 sophomores. So it was a very young group, and we grew as a staff with those young kids, and the ones that stuck around, it paid off because they won 2 championships this year, regular season and tournament.
And now that you're back in the Summit City, what are your expectations for your program here at Purdue Fort Wayne?
It's hard to say that we have hardcore expectations set as of right now. Obviously, I don't have a true understanding of exactly the roster and the strengths and weaknesses of it just yet, but I will tell you I'm not very patient. So whenever we sit down as a staff and we say, listen, this is our group, these are our goals, and this is the timeline, we're going to say, this is a realistic timeline, but my patience is going to say I don't want to wait that long. So I'm really hoping within the next couple of years, Aaron, that we can just be competitive, get to the middle of the pack potentially, get to a winning season. And that's not even great. Finishing 15-14 isn't necessarily a stellar season, but it would be such an improvement and steps in the right direction for this program. And I think we can make those steps relatively quickly. Now, getting to that next level where you're actually competing for a championship, that takes a little bit more time because you really have to generate that culture within those kids, that competitiveness, that, push away from being mediocre and push away from mediocrity as a whole as a program. And that takes a little bit of time to develop. And I'm excited about that process though, because the journey is what it's all about. And it seems like we got a good group here already. And we're going to go out and recruit and get some more good kids to add to it. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
So in these first few weeks with the program, what's on your agenda?
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, figuring out a staff, figuring out who fits with us, which staff members have maybe strengths that are my weaknesses and vice versa, so we can kind of balance each other out. And then just trying to get to know the players. I really want to start building that relationship on a one-on-one level, see what they're about, see what their goals are, see what their hunger level is. I'm excited to see where they're at mentally and if they're ready to get to work. And those two things are just my top priority right now.
How would you describe your brand of basketball, and what can fans expect from your teams?
I don't know if we'll get fully to my brand in 1 year, but in long-term goals, we want to play fast. We want to have an exciting brand. We want to mix it up on defense. We're going to be a primarily a man-to-man defense. I would say 80 to 90% man, but we want to be able to mix it up at times, keep teams off balance, throw some different things at them. We're definitely going to push it in transition. Now, we're not just going to run and gun. We want to take good shots, but we're going to put pressure on the defense, whether it's a make or miss, get the ball out, push it up the floor. And the less we have to run offense, the better. Now, I love offense and I love X's and O's, but if we can kick it ahead and get a high quality shot within the first 10 to 15 seconds, then that's what we want to do. We want to become shot makers. And if we can become really good at just making open shots and taking good looks, it's going to cure a lot of problems. It seems so simple, but it's worked in the past for me, and I'm really hoping it works again.
All right, before we finish up, I've got some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
All right.
What's your favorite social media platform?
Probably Instagram.
What show are you watching now?
No shows right now. Pandemic, I watched so many. Yellowstone was a good recent one I just watched.
What's your favorite food?
Nachos.
And when your team doesn't have a game, what's your favorite thing to do with a free evening?
Probably a little online shopping or hit the outlets.
All right, that will do it for this week's episode of Feature Friday. Thanks to women's basketball head coach Maria Marchesano for joining us this week, and to Fort Financial for sponsoring this week's episode. Be sure to check out GoMastodons.com and follow Purdue Fort Wayne Athletics on social media. Next week, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming with Holly Anderson of the women's golf team. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Go Dons.